I believe that as the elections gets closer and people have to pick between criminal Trump and President Biden, that at the end, Latinos will vote to re-elect President Biden.
That's Luis Miranda, the father of Lin-Manual Miranda of Hamilton fame. He's also the author of a new memoir called Relentless, my story of the Latino spirit that is transforming America. Well, welcome to Chino Y Chicano. I'm Enrique Cerna. Coming up, my conversation with Luis Miranda about his journey from Puerto Rico to New York City, where he became active in Latino politics, not only in the city, but across the country. Of course, we're going to be talking about his very famous son, Lin-Manuel, and how the musical Hamilton has given the family an opportunity to give back in a very big way. I also want to mention that I'm going to be moderating a conversation with Luis Miranda in person at El Centro de la Raza on Seattle's Beacon Hill. It's a free event, and it's happening on June 11th at 2:30 in the afternoon, so please join us if you can. You can find out more information by going to El Centro's website. Now, before we go to the conversation with Luis Miranda, I just want to note that this is the second episode of Chino Y Chicano without my good buddy Matt Chan, who passed away on March 30th. It's been a tough couple of months, and we miss Matt very much. For now, I'm going to continue the podcast with the name Chino Y Chicano, and Matt and I also started another podcast called Unfiltered, and Matt really liked that podcast. He thought it had a lot of potential. It's with Deborah Juarez, former Seattle City Council member, and Omari Salisbury of Converge Media. And before he passed away, Matt told me to continue that podcast, and we're going to do just that. All right, now, here's my conversation with Luis Miranda, the author of Relentless, my story of the Latino spirit that is transforming America. You've been traveling around the country on this book tour. I just like to know, before we kind of talk about the book, your sense of the country right now, everything we're going through. We just had a former president who is now a convicted felon. We have, elsewhere in the world, we have Mexico electing the first woman president. You know, how come the U.S. can't do that? But your sense of the people as you talk to them.
If we were to do nothing else than look at the news, you have a very divided country. If you have 10 hours of Fox News, you turn into a MAGA. If you have 10 hours of MSNBC, you turn into an anti-MAGA. And somewhere in between, there are many, many shades of the same. But when you talk to people, people are struggling with the same issues. Working class people are struggling with inflation. They're happy that unemployment is down, that salaries are up. But the divisiveness touches people when it stops government from doing something good. For example, the Biden administration has been trying to do the student loan forgiveness for an entire 4 years. And MAGA has taken the Biden all the way to the Supreme Court just to give 10, 20, 30,000 loan forgiveness to kids who now have something else to pay, and they cannot do what their parents did of getting their own automobile if they need, get their own apartments. And that's where the divisiveness comes, because it comes so that the party that is not in power can tell those in power they didn't do it. Well, they didn't do it because you had been an obstacle. We saw it with immigration reform. A bipartisan group puts together a blueprint, not perfect for anybody, but it included everything that Republicans wanted: more judges, more security, more of that part of the equation, and more programming and more help for the towns that are giving the welcoming to all of these migrants. It couldn't happen, because if it happens, you begin to solve the problem, and then there is no campaign issue for MAGA and the Republicans that the border is out of control. So the divisiveness, it's people feel it when it impacts public policy.
As you speak to groups around the country, and you really focus on, you have spent your life promoting and trying to help the Latino community in New York, but throughout the country, there has been some talk that there's a shift of Latinos supporting Trump. What do you feel? You feel that's happening?
In what there is, it's Latinos disillusion with the Democratic Party, with thinking that not enough has been done. In one of the few all-Latino polls done in 2023, what you found was that Biden's support from the 2/3 that he got in the election had dropped to around 49%. But Trump's support did not increase. It was in the top 20s, low 30s, where it was during the election. So at this point, Biden is running against the ideal Biden, against the person that people thought Biden will do. And in a perfect world, you do perfect things. But we don't live in a perfect world. I believe that as the elections gets closer and people have to pick between criminal Trump and President Biden, that at the end, Latinos will vote to re-elect President Biden.
Do you think that Trump should go to jail?
I'm not a lawyer. What I read is that any other person who would have committed the white crimes of falsifying records so that his affair with a porn star didn't come out, if that person would have not gone to jail, then Trump should not go to jail either.
Let's talk about the book. And so the decision to write this, has this been something in the works for some time?
No.
Really?
No. It's like everything in my life, Enrique. It sort of, there is a bubble, it happens, it's done, and then I figure out what do I do with it. That it started when I came to New York, and coming to New York to almost most important decisions that I've made in my life. I was telling a group that I was talking to earlier that even though I don't have a plan, God has a plan. And somehow it works out. And believe me, Enrique, it's not because I planned it. It started with people asking me over and over what we just talked about. Is it true that Latinos are turning Republican? And I will sort of criticize new pundits who are out there who I have never heard of, who read a poll where Latinos are 8 or 9% of the respondents. So it's not a poll that you will use to make any conclusions about Latinos, and then concluding that we're turning Republican, that we're turning this, that we're turning the other. And my friends just kept telling me, rather than complain, why don't you do something about it? Why you then don't write about your experience of 45 years being on this lane. So I said, you know what? I want to do that. I want to take that advice, and I'm going to do that. And at the end, Enrique, everything happened very, very quickly. And what I thought was going to be a much slower process became an accelerated process. And all of a sudden, there was May 7th when we dropped the book.
Wow. So a short amount of time, and you just sort of like your life has been, again, a relentless drive and relentless in getting this book out then.
Once I decide I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something. I'm going to use all of my energy, all of my resources, all of the good people who are part of my posse to get to the goal.
So, okay, you were born and raised in Puerto Rico. You had a mother who was a driving force and probably had a lot to do with you always seeking to be the best. And you had a father that was, he was supportive in a different way. It was sort of like, hey, give him a little space. You come to the United States, really, to go to school at NYU, you're going to be in a PhD program for psychology, but you don't become a psychologist. You don't become a counselor. It was never really a good fit for you.
It was not. But when you think you ought to do something, and in my case, quitting was never an option. This was the first thing that I quit, that I realized I had been told a couple of times by professors at the PhD program that I was not a good fit, that I always wanted to force, to accelerate the therapeutic relationship, that I wanted people to change faster than they were willing and able to change. And they told me over and over, the therapeutic relationship, patients change at their pace, not at yours. So I think that after a while, I realized I can't do this because I was always involved in activism. And I could see the bigger changes that could take place when you use other avenues for change and not just the one-on-one to make sure that people get better and become the better self that they can be. So given the fact that I had a taste of those other avenues, I said, this is not my lane. So I didn't get a PhD, but I got a PhD because that's where I got my wife of now 46 years.
In your life, particularly in New York, you spent a lot of time in the political sector, but also on with different administrations working different jobs. I'm just curious if you can give me a little feedback on the people that you worked for, mayors in New York City, and how they really affected your life and the good and the bad. So let's start with Ed Koch.
Ed Koch gave me the opportunity of my life. I'm not sure that I was the best for the job, but he took a chance on a kid of 33 years of age that had experiences. If you looked at my resume, it looked like a crazy person. Had been going from job to job to job to job, because now when I decided at 24 that I was not going to be a clinical psychologist, that I just continued to give myself a chance to do something that I liked, from the National Action Council in Minorities in Engineering to the Department of Education to being a lobbyist on youth employment, many, many different kinds of stuff. And the mayor gave me that shot and allowed me to do with my office whatever I thought was best for the Latino community. And from an office that spent an awful amount of time giving proclamations and citations wherever there was Latino events, to an office that was working with city agencies to make a difference in the lives of Latinos. I was fortunate that just as I was arriving in the office, the mayor had set up a commission on Latino affairs, on Hispanic affairs at that point, and there was a blueprint. After many hearings throughout the city and in many Latino communities throughout the city, there was a blueprint of what the Latino community thought was needed to make their lives better. So I had a blueprint to work with. Not many had that before me. With Dinkins, it was a different reality. I was in just one agency, in the Health and Hospitals Corporation, as a board member, and I worked in two main areas. So I'm always very thankful that I stayed during this entire administration, because I learned the health business. And I learned the health business from two vantage points that not many people have the opportunity to do. One is from the capital construction perspective. What is it that you need to create to provide health services? Because I headed the capital committee. And from an economic perspective, how do you fund good health for the poor?
Right. Wasn't that also a connection there, in that as Koch was leaving office, he appointed you to, was it a hospital board?
Correct.
And then you stayed that with...
That was not even where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Ed Koch had asked us, okay, I'm losing, I'm gone. Do you want to continue to serve the city in a non-paid capacity somewhere? So I said, at the end of the day, I spent all those years studying clinical psychology. Appoint me to the board of mental hygiene, mental retardation, and alcoholism services. That was the department. And he heard me wrong, and he appointed me to the board of the Health and Hospitals Corporation. So I spent the entire term of Dinkins there. And then Giuliani, who came in First Republican in a very, very long time, trying to present himself as someone who is going to bring the different sectors of New York together, appointed me chairperson of the board. And I always had trepidation and my doubts that would work, because I had seen Giuliani as a public persona, never closed. And so I accepted the job and literally left a year later with a horrible taste. When I see now Giuliani perspire blackness from his head, I could understand why, because I was never a good guy. I got the sense more and more during that year that I worked. There are people that you feel and you hope that there'll be goodness on the next layer. And And with him, I had peeled enough to know that there wasn't a lot of goodness there.
When you see him today, I suppose for you, it's maybe not as shocking as it is for other people that saw him as who've been touted at one time after 9/11, the country's mayor, And
Absolutely. Listen, the caricature that he has become, it's worse than anything that even those of us who knew he was not the country's mayor. And in fact, I was running Freddie Ferrer's campaign during 9/11, and Mayor Giuliani floated the idea that we should change the state constitution and the city's constitution to allow him one more term, to stay one more term. And I was always, and our entire campaign with Freddie Ferrer at the helm, listen, even during the Civil War, we had a change of government. Government needs to exist by itself. And democracy, it's all about electing the next crop of people who are going to take on the challenges that we face as a city and as a nation.
Let's talk about your son, Lin-Manuel. Well, let's talk about all your kids, for one thing. Tell me about your children.
My oldest, it's, we call her Lucecita. My wife is Luz. If anything were to happen to me, she is the call. She is the contact person on my phone to call. My wife is second. But my daughter is first because she is the fixer in our family. She is the no-nonsense, let's take care of business. She's an engineer and an MBA. And let's figure out what we need to do. Very much like me. My son, it's the artist. It's the lane that we knew from an early age that he was going to follow because he was always very talented. And music was always the inspiration of his life. And then those two kids are old and gone. And we ended up raising, and I ended up becoming the guardian of my great nephew, who just graduated from college with a degree in music, and now needs to spend some time figuring out what is it that he does with his life. So I have very different kids of very different ages. My Lin-Manuel and Lucecita always say that I was, which is true, I was much more present in Miguel's life because I was older. My life was more complete. The basic needs, I had two kids at 24 years of age. So there is development that it's taking personally, as a family, professionally, as you're also raising kids. That doesn't happen when you begin to raise and you're already 45 years old.
Lin-Manuel and everything that he has accomplished, what does that mean for you as a father?
We come to this country to make sure the life of future generations are better than yours. So seeing that I have accomplished that with both Lin-Manuel and Lucecita, and now Miguel having graduated from college, it's like my life is kind of complete on that personal side. And what Lin-Manuel also brought in our lives, it's that he brought this huge megaphone that now we have in the family to fight for the things that we believe in. And before, we had to fight in the local newspapers, and now we could speak to the entire country because there's a megaphone that comes with everything that he has accomplished. The other thing that he did, particularly around Hamilton, is that by us becoming investors in Hamilton and Hamilton doing so well financially, it was the first time in our lives that we are not living from paycheck to paycheck, which is the way in which we lived most of our lives until 2015, when Hamilton came. And all of a sudden, we not only have our beliefs and our human capital, which is what we gave to the many organizations that we work with, but now we actually have financial resources that we can use in making sure change takes place.
To the arts and to people that are in need and to the community. That's
Absolutely.
beautiful.
So in several weeks, we're having the Miranda Fellows come together. 100 Black and Latino, for the most part, students of the arts that are going to change the arts. And we want to be a little part of that journey. So that would have not been able to happen before Hamilton, because now we have the resources to spend on this generation of young artists, and we have the contacts to make sure they have access to something Lin-Manuel didn't have while he was making it through the arts.
There were some tidbits in the book that I just want to get your reaction to in a little storytelling here. One was having lunch with Bianca Jagger. And you didn't even know who Bianca Jagger
no,
Rolling Stones were.
I am so much in the things that I enjoy, that I fight for, that I get involved, that I don't know many things that I probably should know, given the fact that my son is such a big dude in the arts. But this woman had been calling. I had no idea who she was. My deputy tells me it's Bianca Jagger. I'm like, it's a pretty name. And she's like, no. It's Bianca Jagger. I'm like, I got it. Pretty name. She said, no, she is Mike Jagger's ex-wife. And I'm like, and why an ex-wife should be of concern to me? And then, I learned a little about her and realized that in the development of the Federation and us wanting to do our first fundraiser as an organization, having people who had access to others with money and fame was important. So she became an ally in the development of the Federation, but initially I had no idea who Jagger was.
Even though her husband, Mick, probably could have funded you for many, many years. And that was, by the way, you were at the time heading up an organization called the Hispanic Federation.
Correct.
Which brought together a lot of Hispanic groups in New York. Yeah. Another little tidbit, Encanto, that Lin-Manuel did the music for, and I think he did some writing on that. But there is a family connection, not just him, but was it the grandma, the abuelita in that?
It was. I began to show up to meetings with Disney about Encanto. And Lin-Manuel a couple of times asked, what are you doing here? I'm like, I invited myself. Nobody disinvited me. And he's like, I just don't think it's appropriate that you're here. So I think it is. And I will sit through the meetings. So finally, they actually hired me as a consultant to the movie. So now I went to all of the meetings, and I went on the research trip that we did to Colombia. And when we were back and people were pounding ideas and discussing ideas, and we knew that the extended family had to be contextually part of a story of our Latino family. I told the story of my great-grandmother who lived in the same house with all of her kids and her kids' wives and husbands and whatever grandchildren had been born at that time. My mother, who was the oldest, lived in that house for a little while, and she was sort of like the matriarch in charge of the family, and people found it interesting as a concept, as an overall concept.
Sounds very Latino family to me. So,
Very Latino family.
I know. One other little thing. I heard that in 2017, you had a heart attack. And when you were having the chest pains, you were riding in a car, and you decided to go ahead and go to the hospital. But you, instead of paying, and I guess it was pretty hefty fee for parking close by to the hospital,
$50.
you kept driving around looking for a place to park that was cheaper, and you're still having the chest pain. Dude,
I'm having chest pain. For all I knew, it was just gas that a couple of good farts or burps would have not handled. So I didn't want to pay $50. So, yeah, there is alternate site parking in New York City. So I was just hoping that I would find a place to park, which I actually did. I didn't know that I will have a heart attack and that then they will keep me beyond the 3 hours that I had for that alternate parking. That's why when I got to the hospital and I was feeling better and they scheduled surgery and all of that, I asked the doctor, will we be done by 11? Because that's when my car has to be moved. Hey, ignorance can be daring.
I guess so. So, doing this tour and traveling around the country, what's it meant to you? What have you gotten out of it?
You get to meet lots of great people. You get to sit at a table to sign books for people, and everybody will tell you a story. And they will tell you the story of their grandparents, of their parents, something that they're going through, something about their children. So if anything else, if this book makes people connect to their families and their reality, I would have accomplished a great deal. When you add to that it serves as one more asset for me to go throughout the country to present my vision of life and to work with others in making that vision a reality. I'm going to be in your town working with an organization that has changed the lives of Latinos in your town. So that by itself, it's an unbelievable feast. Before we started talking, I told you, and then I go to Chicago, where I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to be meeting with a group of leaders who have change the face of Latinidad in Chicago by creating institutions. So the book, it's just an asset to meet people and hopefully effectuate change.
Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person because I will be at El Centro de la Raza along with you. We are going to have a session, little fireside talk, along with a few other people, talking about the things we just talked about, as well as the upcoming election, and hear more of your story. And I think you'll really enjoy knowing the story of El Centro. And hopefully here in Seattle, it's going to be a very pretty day, because right now it's been a little rainy out there, but I think it's going to be better by then. Listen, Luis, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me very much. And
thank you very much, Enrique, and I look forward to seeing you on June 11th.
Okay, I'll be there. Okay, Luis Miranda, thank you so much. Take care. No more heart attacks, by the way.
I'll do my best.
The Chino Y Chicano podcast is available on your favorite podcast provider.
You can watch the video version on YouTube and Converge Media, a leading producer of culturally relevant content in the Pacific Northwest. We'll talk more later.